This is Catherine Getzky, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life. Well, hello, listeners. How are you today? Welcome to the Hope Matrix podcast. This is Catherine Getzky here, and I am super excited to share with you our guest today, whom I met at an event we did last year for the International Day of Hope. Her story is incredible, so inspiring. I'm so grateful to have met her. We have Chef Grace Ramirez, who is in New York City right now, or from New York City. So welcome to the show, Grace. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is, I think meeting on the International Day of Hope is very hopeful, and it's a beginning of something beautiful. So I feel very grateful to be here with you guys today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I was so deeply inspired by your story and kind of your life's journey, what you've kind of gone through, overcome, persevered, how you've navigated your way to what you're doing today. I think, so many times, especially young girls see successful women and they think it's just like they were born successful and don't really realize kind of the journey it takes and the day in and day out things that we have to do to accomplish whatever it is we hope for in life. And my aim is to get people sharing with, especially our younger generation, what are the specific skills? What are the things we have to do day in and day out? What are the challenges we might face, and how might we kind of navigate those challenges so that when they encounter the challenges, they're pre-equipped with and learn from people that have paved the way for them. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that I really sincerely love talking about this because, I said the other day, and it was a little bit taken out of context, but it's like I'm a 20-year overnight success in the sense of like, it's taken me 20 years to get to where I am today of nonstop work. And, I don't necessarily love saying hard work, but the truth is it has been hard work. I think that I'm obviously just going to be able to share my story and my struggles and what I've been through. And I'm not necessarily saying that it has to be that hard. It's just my journey, right? My journey has not been easy at all. I say to my team, like, I feel like I walk through the Everglades every day, and it's muddy and thick, and I don't know what's going to get me and bite me, and it's scary, and a lot of times I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, but I have this trust, right? And I think that this is something we'll touch upon. I think that having that trust and that intuition and really cultivating that is essential. Has been essential for me particularly, right? I think that if I look back in my life, I feel super grateful, and I'm very thankful to be in this position that I am now. I've been able to accomplish, even though I am the type of woman that feels like I have done nothing. But if I look back, I am very grateful for having written 2 complete cookbooks, collaborated with the world's best chefs in 2 other cookbooks. So that's 4 cookbooks in total, done about 6 TV shows around the world, done, being a chef partner with the United Nations, being part of the Chef Council of New York City, being COVID hero of the city of New York named by. So if I look back, we've done a little bit, right, of what I've dreamed of when I was little, but it still feels like it's only the beginning, which I think it's a combination of the immigrant story with a lot of pressure to my family had everything, we lost everything, and like now I'm like the main breadwinner in my family, so just like to just be overly successful because I feel so much pressure. It's a big heavy bag that I've had to learn to kind of unpack and see what suits me and what doesn't. But yeah, there's a lot to unwind
Yeah.
of what I've been through. But I do have to say that it's funny because now everything that happens, I do feel like, wow, my past has prepared me to deal with this right this second.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're on Chef Grace Ramirez on social. So I
Yeah.
see a lot of your posts. And yeah, talk more about the successes, about what you're super and what you're doing now that you're loving doing. I mean, yeah, chef at the UN. I mean, are you kidding me? 4 cookbooks.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey because I started when I was literally 19 years old. I started working at Nickelodeon, then I worked at MTV, then I worked at the Food Network. And then,
Oh my gosh.
that directing shows for Bobby Flay, which is amazing. And then falling in love with the kitchen. Then obviously I come from not obviously, but I come from a Latino family, a big
Mm.
Latino family with, more than 70 cousins, very loving grandparents that would host on Sundays more than 70 people, and they would graciously do it, no problem, the more the merrier kind of thing. So food has always been in the center of my life. Growing up in a household where food that was the excuse to always get together, right? But then when I worked at the Food Network, I felt in love with the hospitality industry in general. Like I remember walking into kitchens and I was like, this is where I belong. But I had already had one career, which I was being, at 24, I was directing shows and being in charge of artist related specials. So it was very scary for me to transition from being, a producer director and having a great job to starting over, quote unquote, and becoming a chef. And I was in debt from my first career, and to take that leap of faith to then be in debt for a second career was very challenging and scary. But I did this show that this is one of the things that you have to trust. Like one perfect example, and I talk about this a lot, but I did the first Master Chef, and I was horrible at it, and they kicked me out, and they said, go to culinary school and come back. And I cried for a month, and I ate a lot of ice cream and reflected and started reading books about different chefs. And David Chang said, I went to culinary school in New York City and it took me 9 months. And I was like, well, women have babies in 9 months. Maybe I can give birth to culinary school.
Right.
Children cost a lot of money. So
Mhm.
I was like, it's now or never. And at that time, thank God I had a very supportive partner, which just said, go for it, um, and I did, and it changed my life into really getting to know another side of me that was so passionate about food and the industry, and having done culinary school in New York, that most of New York kitchens are run by Latinos, and having that connection of being able to speak English and Spanish and connect with my line cooks and my prep cooks, but also understand my executive chefs. And so it became like this, I became like a bridge between line cooks, prep cooks, and what the executive chefs wanted, which was, it was really funny because, they will tell me to translate. And back then it was okay to be very abusive in the kitchen. And I would translate in a very soft, and like, what he's really meaning is like,
Oh my gosh.
the job better. And he was like, no, he's like screaming at me and cursing. I was like, it's okay. It means the same. And but it was beautiful to have that I felt so grateful to be an American citizen and have and speak both languages and understand both cultures. And I felt like I could carry that Latina flag proudly, right? And kind of pass that hopeful message of like, we're Latinos, we're amazing. Like we have all this buying power, it's kind of like making my prep cooks and line cooks feel very hopeful about their future and who we are as a culture, right? Because I think that, there's a lot of trauma and a lot of struggle of being first generation and having and a lot of shame. It's changing now drastically, which I'm so excited to see. But 15, 20 years ago, it was just like it's kind of like keep your head down, work hard, assimilate the culture, try to speak English and not really speak Spanish and just just fit in. And I love seeing now that we are slowly and surely getting more proud and acknowledging who we are in this country and understanding that that this minority is now a big part of this country and this economy. So that you know they gave me a lot of strength when I thought I couldn't make it. I was like, we can do this together, because I felt, and I think that's something that is essential when community is key to feel hope. Community, being surrounded by people that you love or that have your back. Like, I mean, my line cooks and my chef cooks, I feel like a big part of me is Mexican, not only because my mom lives in Mexico, but because my prep cooks and my line cooks, they got me. And they it's been quite a journey of like having a career in television, then moving into the kitchen, not knowing what I was doing, but having an amazing network of line cooks and prep cooks and people around me that they were like really pushing me and really wanted me to succeed, right? Because I was so passionate and driven. So that's like one little part of my journey that let me. And I think that also working at MTV then gave me the confidence to be in front of the camera and to be comfortable interviewing artists. And it was just second nature to me doing that kind of work. So I feel like that's all worked out, that it just came from this TV world to then the kitchen to then having my own shows. And then now we are basically, Chef Grace Ramirez has become a brand that it's bigger than me, that, we not only have done the cookbooks, the shows, but now we're basically like, we're like a one-stop production company when it comes to different brands with different needs. We do content, we do TV shows, but we also produce, massive events, like we just did the largest cultural event in conjunction with the DOT in the city and the mayor's office and a lot of government agencies that came together, and we produced Day of the Dead in Times Square, which was the largest,
wow,
the largest cultural event Times Square has ever seen. So I think that's because it was the course of 2 days. It was like over 400,000 people that went through, and imagine we had altars and mariachis, and it was like a beautiful display of Latin culture that I think the city needed to feel hopeful.
Yeah,
that was my pitch, literally, to the commissioner of transportation. It was like, the city needs a little hope right now. So let's celebrate culture in a massive way. So I think that I look back and I say all those struggles and all those things have led me to be prepared for anything that is coming my way today.
Yeah. And I mean, youth right now are struggling so much and so identify with hopelessness. And that's that sense of despair and that helplessness. So not with hope, and especially in the Latina population. I mean, I think in just girls overall, 57% persistently hopeless. And, and that's what started my work many years ago, is just what is hopelessness and how do we get to hope? What are skills that we can cultivate? And then learning that hope is something we have to intentionally practice and we have to bring into our life, and we have to create these experiences and events and connections. And there are things that we can do to build hope.
Yeah.
And to me, that message is especially important for young women, especially in the Latina populations, so that they esperanza, right, is hope in Spanish, yeah, so that they start learning skills that, like, there's a lot we can focus on that can lead us down into despair and a sense of helplessness, and there are things we can and must do in our lives to cultivate hope.
Yeah. I understand the feeling, because it is really, I felt very hopeless a lot of times in my life. And I think that it has not been easy to come out of that. I think there's several things that I've done to be able to overcome that. And I think that there's several things that we do need to take a responsibility of not only our own lives, but like, are what are we doing? Are we making people feel not hopeful? And I think that there's two parts here, right? There is the responsibility that we have with ourselves, right? For me, it's been, I practice this meditation called the Isha system. It's been life changing for me. I did 6 months. When I lost my grandmother, and I got divorced. It was a very difficult time in my life, because my grandmother was like my North Star. She always made me feel hopeful and loved, and then, losing my marriage was something that after 10 years, like, I just never thought that was going to happen. And then, so to lose these two very strong pillars in my life was just very, very, very difficult. And looking back, I'm such a cheerful person, and I'm so positive, and I'm so hopeful. But I realized now that I was going through a massive depression, and I didn't know what was happening, but I just couldn't stop crying, and I felt so hopeless. And so first, was cultivating that inner strength was essential for me. So that's why I literally left everything, and it was very hard for me to do, because I felt so irresponsible for me to, quote unquote, take this break. But I truly felt that it was either that or I wasn't going to make it. Like, it was like literally like a life and death kind of situation, because I felt so hopeless. So I was like, if I don't focus on really gaining that strength back, and if I don't focus on cultivating that inner fire, and cultivating that consciousness, and that is internal, and that only you can give yourself, then I'm not going to be able to do anything else. So for me, and that is still something that I practice every day. And I think that you have to have a routine that, whatever it is, works for you. Meditating, doing exercise. Why? Because you need that you need all those endorphins. You need that natural medication to help you get out of the funk, right? So I think that there's a lot of things that we need to have in our routine, that whatever it is that we need in order for us to feel good in the baseline, right?
Yeah.
Then, it's about really surrounding yourself in community with a good support system. And if you don't have that in your family, then you need to get a church group or a support group or a youth group or whatever it is. And it's just a matter of doing a little research that will get you to the right place. And it's like a therapist. Maybe the first one doesn't work for you, but don't feel hopeless because the first one, you have to keep looking until you find that community that's going to help you, lift you up and get you out of that funk when you're not feeling so great. That is another essential thing. Other thing is about giving back to the community. I think that's also been an ultra essential part of me not feeling hopeless and of my keep goingness is that, if I don't go out, I worked with World Central Kitchen for many years now, and I'm ambassador for them. But they know that anytime they need me, I will go to Gaza. I will, I did Puerto Rico, Maria, I did Dorian in the Bahamas, the hurricanes. I was there in the Venezuelan and Colombian border during the height of the migration crisis. So I helped them set up the Venezuela operation. I'm supporting them in Gaza, but I also went to Israel. So I'm like, so that kind of, when I do that type of work, and it doesn't have to be, because I also do a lot of work in my community, up in Harlem, and working in food pantries, and I'm working with Aid for Life when I'm training migrants, you know, asylum seekers to find jobs in the hospitality industry. If I'm not constantly seeing, right, and giving back, it's very easy for me to just focus on my own umbilical cord, on my own belly, and just look at myself, right?
Yeah.
So and I think when we're feeling hopeless, it's just we start feeding on that. I call it the chi-chi stage. So if you're chi-chi, and then you just look at your chi-chi, inner chi-chi, and then you're feeling chi-chi, and it's like a whole chi-chi-ness of, and it becomes like a domino effect of like a very, tornado is like that. It's very hard to get out. But I promise you, if you go out for one Saturday morning or one Sunday, morning, and volunteer, either at a food pantry or whatever suits your heart, and you you see the gratefulness of people receiving food that have no food, and you see the kids of the children, and you start playing with kids, and I remember in the moment when my grandmother died. I went to Puerto Rico to work with World Central Kitchen in Maria after the hurricane, and the resilience of the Boricua, of my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters is amazing, right? They don't have a roof, and they're like, oh, it doesn't matter, we have water. They don't have water, it doesn't matter, we have a roof. You don't have a roof, we don't have water. Oh, it doesn't matter, we have fire, and we have, and their neighbor has something. So they're always looking at the glass half full. And that was something that for me, I was like, here I am complaining, but at least I have a roof, I have health, I have fire, I have food. So for me, it is very important to and to realizing life, like, because I think that the problem is these days, the younger generations are just looking at Instagram, and they're looking at these perfect lives, and they're feeling really hopeless and bad for their own life. But if you want to give, and you see the problems that the community is facing, even in our backyard, and you see people struggling, and you see someone that doesn't have a home, and how grateful they are to have a piece of bread or to have food, then you're like, oh, wait, my life is not that terrible, right? Or these are the blessings that I have to count in my life, right? I do have these things. And I think that is something key. Constantly, what are you focusing on? Because I can right now tell you 150 things why I should feel sad right now, because I have a lot of them, and real struggles right this second.
Right.
In my family, losses, love, I have a lot of personal stuff that is going on right this second why I should feel hopeless. But I also have 150 things that I can focus on right now why I should feel joyful. And I'm not saying that you should be denying your feelings, because you should take time to honor your feelings. That's part of it. But you have to honor, feel them, release them, and go.
Yeah.
Honor them, feel them, release them, go. So I always say it's like either you do you, like meditate, go for a run, punch a pillow, express whatever you need to do to move that energy, you move it. But then, okay, the sun is shining. I can breathe. I have a plate of food, and do something that makes you feel joyful. And that is a process. It's like you're saying, and that's something you're choosing in each moment. I feel like every time I mentor, people are expecting this, angel or God or a magnitude force to come and make you feel joyful. I'm like, oh, it's like a muscle. You must train it. You don't get muscle just by looking at it and you're going to get a muscle. You train to get a muscle. It's the same thing with feeling joyful or feeling happy or any of these things. You have to cultivate them.
So when did you learn this?
I think
Yeah.
that my mom, look, my dad died when I was a year old, and my mom, suffered a lot of trauma from that. He passed away on Christmas Eve, when I was a year old, and it was a very traumatic, tragic death. He died in a car crash, and mom was deeply affected by this, and I think that um, she herself was feeling so hopeless that I think that my mom's focus throughout her life has been like, I need to put this child in therapy. I need to put this child in, so I grew up literally, I went to yoga before yoga was a thing. Like I was, you know, 4 to 6 years old and I'll be doing yoga with my mom, and my mom will put me like in all the things that she was doing spiritually to try to get out of this, and try to live like a happy, healthy life. And so I did grow up like this, but it was not until really I started going deep in the Asia system. And I did the 6 months that my life was completely transformed, because I dedicated 6 months of my life to meditating 8 hours a day, going through really having a deep look at myself, and also healing the relationship with my mom, that I had a very complicated relationship with her. And because I felt mom gave me a lot of tools to be very independent, but I always wanted a mom,
Mm-hmm.
now I can give back and just be so grateful for that. But it was hard, because I'm like, mom, I just want you to be my mom. And like, like just say for you for a second, and like cuddle
Right.
me. And my mom was just making me really tough, and really, she was very into tough love. And now, now we have a great relationship, and now I'm super grateful about it. But yes, I was always seeking that love outside, and that love represented my grandmother. And when my grandmother passed, I had to say, wait, I have to cultivate this love internally, because if not, then I'm always just going to keep searching for that and wanting somebody to fill that hole and that void. And unfortunately, I know we don't like hearing it, but you are the only one that can truly give that to yourself. Everything
Yeah.
else is bonus, and everything else is frosting. But you must build that cake internally to be able to have something substantial that sustains you during whatever comes,
Yeah.
comes to you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So to all young women listening, that is a key point. I mean, we search for love outside of ourselves, and in so many different ways, shape, forms, look for things outside of ourselves to fix a part of ourselves or heal a part of ourselves, or, when we must be able to give that to ourselves and fill ourselves. And like you said, then the rest is, icing on the top, but we come from a full place,
Yeah.
and it's,
Well, and the other thing is like, I find it very interesting, and I think that this is something that we must really take in, is just like, we cannot demand from the universe something that we're not giving to ourselves.
yeah,
We cannot be violent with ourselves, putting ourselves down, not treating ourselves properly, but yet we want somebody outside to be loving and supportive and nurturing, but yet you're being so violent and unloving and unkind to yourself. So we must learn, we like it or not, the universe is a mirror, and it's like, what are we cultivating internally that is going to manifest externally? That's something key.
yeah, absolutely. And how we speak to ourselves. Like, if you really start listening to what you're saying to yourself on a regular basis, how you're speaking to yourself, becoming aware of that for me was just like, I could be compassionate with other people and caring and loving and nurturing. And yet I was so not that way with myself. I was so punishing and harming, and, becoming aware of that, and just the language I used with myself and what I said to
Yeah.
myself. I was so turned off by affirming beliefs, affirmations and affirming beliefs. And yet that's what I mean. What we believe about ourselves, we really do create. I mean, it's So true. So changing those beliefs and those, what we're saying to ourselves is really so important to how we feel about ourselves and then what we
Yeah,
create.
and questioning our ideas, like where is this idea coming from? Because we have this fixated ideas that we're like, it's just ideas,
Yeah, right,
not the
right.
truth of what
Uh-huh.
we are. And I think that is key, starting to really take a step back and, like you're saying, like what is the narrative that we're telling ourselves? What is, I call it the programming. Like, what is that programming? It's like that, that record player telling us, and kind of like stop it and be like,
Yeah.
okay, what, and what is it I want to create?
Yeah.
Instead of like going back into what you've done wrong, or what you feel you haven't done, or what you feel, we spend so much energy and time and to going back into what we said that was wrong, or what we did that was wrong, or what we did, instead of
Mhm.
focusing, okay, it happened. We can't turn back time. We know this.
Right,
How do
right.
we how do we learn from this, and how do we move forward? And I think that is something that we have to be really kind of, radically stop.
Exactly. Yeah.
We have to
I
say
know.
stop and, okay, what can I learn
Yeah.
from this situation? What can I take from this situation? Is there something I can do to fix in this situation? And how do I move forward from this situation? Period. Like,
Yeah.
instead of like, because that's what makes you spiraling down and
Totally.
into a rabbit hole that it's very hard to get out of
Yeah.
and suit anybody. So,
Yeah.
for me, it's like that is something that is key to do.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
like, kind of being, okay, enough,
Mm.
and either you punch the pillow, you punch the
Whatever.
punching bag, whatever you need to do to get
Yeah.
that anger or frustration out, and really say,
Yeah.
okay, we all have those, oh, I effed up moments, but
Yeah.
what can I learn from this? What can I do?
Yeah.
And how do I, if I can fix something, I will. If I need to say I'm sorry, I will. If whatever you need to do, you do for you. And
Yeah. Move on. Yeah. I used to say I could ruminate myself into a depressive episode.
yeah,
It's like going over and over and over. And then, of course, you develop clinical depression. I mean, that persistent hopelessness, that despair and helplessness. Because when you're thinking about things in the past, I mean, you can't do anything about them in the past. You can deconstruct it and figure out what to do better moving forward, and that's it. Like continuing to go over it and over it and over it. So unhealthy.
so unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet we're never taught this in school. And that's what kind of amazes me. I mean, there's so much of this work that we're just not getting taught, and we have to kind of self-discover and figure out, but it affects everything we want in life, you know?
Well, I think that things. I mean, this massive, crisis that we're having in our mental health space is going to force the
Yeah.
education system to start doing things differently. I think that is. I mean, we're hitting rock bottom as a society
I
with this,
know.
and I think that you know, it's an epidemic, and I think
Mm.
that obviously the pandemic um, put a very big spotlight on this issue, and yeah, I do think that out of this, something good is going to come out of, because you're right, nobody teaches this in school. And no, it's like I say about leadership, nobody teaches you how to be a good leader. You kind of have
Yeah.
to figure out how to be a good leader. But I wish people would have taught me how to be a better leader.
Yeah, right,
I
right.
figure it out, and I'd make a lot of mistakes. And but it is something that it is going to start to it has to be part of school programs, because I don't think we're going to be able to sustain it this much longer if we don't do something about it.
I know, something drastic. I mean, you think about all the mental health challenges our youth are having and the number of providers that we have that just aren't enough. And we don't want to wait till kids are in crisis. And we know that so much of this is preventable through skills, through teaching skills around it. So, I
That's
just
why the work you're doing is so important.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just talking to one of our hope science, like a hope scientist, and he was talking about all the outcomes as it relates to hope. If you can we measure hope, and if we can increase hope, all of the connection outcomes, health outcomes, work outcomes, lifespan, all of that. And that's really, to me, hope is so much around mental health and violence prevention and safety and peace and kind of all of those things that we want. And yet we've got to be taught skills if we want to be mentally healthy,
Absolutely.
and peaceful and all of that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And it's why it's so amazing that I met you and that, you can share your story and the work you're doing with the world. Because to me, you're such a story of hope and such, the challenges you went along the way, the learnings you had. I mean, you have so much to offer, or especially our young women struggling right now, thinking about, what do I want to do in the future? Like, I love that you changed careers. That's, I mean, not totally, but, a pretty big change. And, kids, when they start thinking about their goals in life and what they want, they get so nervous to create any goal because they think, well, I don't know if that's it, if that's like what I want to do forever. And just because you kind of start out on one path doesn't mean you're not going to have a bunch of different paths along the way.
I agree. And I always say this, like, I think that our youth is really struggling to make the fear of failure is so high that then they're petrified in making any sort of any decisions at all.
Yeah.
And I say, just make one decision and give it 100%. And if you don't like it, then change your mind. But your feet cannot be on two boats. And I think that they're afraid of failure and commitment to anything. It's petrifying. And I say, just give it your all and give it your all for a year, but give it
right.
100% for at least a year, not 2 months, not 3, but 100%. I would like to say 2 years, but for them, 2 years seems like a lifetime. But you know what? I think that's the thing. Like, pick one thing and give it your all, and give it your all for a bit, but just don't have your feet in two boats, because it's not going to take you any. If you imagine going down the stream, down a river, and you have one feet in one boat and the other feet in another boat, you're not going to get very far. And you're going to get frustrated, you're going to fall. And I think that is the problem. Like, and I'm not saying, like, my dream was to have a cookbook, right? My first cookbook, La Latina, that's my baby. And La Latina is, my family recipes, my travels through Latin America. My mom has lived in Colombia and Venezuela. She currently lives in Mexico and Uruguay. And she lived in Chile, in Argentina. We lived in Costa Rica. So it's an homage to all the places that my mom has lived in, and all the places where I have visited her, plus family recipes. And I wanted to do that cookbook for 10 years before I got the green light to make that cookbook. And was it easy? No. It's been one of my hardest projects I've ever done, because it was so personal and it was so challenging. And I went through so many challenges trying to publish that book. From the design, well, first trying to get it published, then the design, then, my vision versus theirs. I was one of the first female Latina authors. I published it via New Zealand, Oceania, in Random House, female Latina author in Random House in that part of the world to ever do a cookbook. So we had very different visions. At the end, they were amazing because they really trusted me. But I had to get my own designer. I had to get my own photos. I had to, and kind of show them exactly what I wanted, because for them, they couldn't really see it. They thought it was just a Mexican cookbook. And I'm like, no, it's not Mexican. It's an homage to all of Latin America. And what is the thread of this whole thing? So I think you have to understand, like, I have so many people saying, I want to do a book. And I say, well, start your outline at least, because it's like winning the lotto, right? I want to write a book, but then you're not playing the lotto. It's like, win the lotto, but you're not even buying a ticket. So it's the same thing. It's like a lot of people say they want to write a book, but they're not even doing the homework of what type of book do they want to do? What do they want to talk about? What is the outline, etc. So I think that is something that is very important. Like, whatever you want to do, you have to start working towards that you want to do.
Yeah.
That, right now it's like we have we have a migrant crisis in New York City, right? We have a migrant crisis in New York City. Where, more than 157,000 people have come into our city. And, I'm an immigrant. I was born in this country, but I'm considering myself an immigrant. And I know the challenges we're facing, right? But I'm like, but I need to be part of the solution, not the problem, right? We can sit here and complain all we want, but these are human beings over here. And what is happening in my industry, in the hospitality industry, we have a workforce crisis. There's not enough people that want to work in our hospitality industry. So I'm going to build training programs to have people to work in our kitchens, because not that many people want to sit there and peel 200 pounds of potatoes or go through 100 pounds of chicken, etc. So if we're able to place these people and find them jobs, then they're no longer a burden to our society. Then they're contributing to our society. And that's the way I look at life. Like, how can you turn a problem into a solution? Because complaining makes you feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Finding solutions make you feel hopeful. And that to me is something that I always think about. I can sit here and complain. Yes, it's in my DNA. It's in my default. Or I can find a solution. I'm going to always try to find a solution.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what would you encourage younger people to do to find people to help them finding their solutions, to start going to what they hope for?
I think right now we have a lot of different resources, right? And I think that first of all is, first and foremost, what is aligned with your heart, what resonates with you, finding groups or finding mentorship programs. They're out there. There are a lot of resources out there, but you have to first start what is aligned to you. Like I said, is it a church group? Is it a youth group? Is it music? Is it and build community, but really go into a community that is going to lift you up. And I think the other part is we, as women, that, I always say to my friends who are successful, or who have a platform or a capability of giving other people's opportunities, is our jobs to mentor and give other women opportunities, and stop this nonsense of like, it's either you or me, and this competitive spirit. It's like, no, actually, if you do well, I do better. I'm going to teach you whatever I can so you can be better, because you are the future, and I think that people that don't do that comes out from an insecure space that we need to work on, because, we need to pay it forward.
Absolutely. I'm just curious, did you actually do set goals? Do you have or do you intuitively? I mean, some people have a process where they actually do their goals, or do you just kind of know what you want?
You know what? I think that's a very interesting question, because the other day I got a homework assignment to have my short-term and long-term goals in terms of my personal life on paper. And it was the most painful. Like I'm talking about, I have chills. It was a very painful, overwhelming exercise for me, because this is an area that I'm struggling with, right? I am now this age, and I thought my life was going to be this way, and now my life is this way. And I'm so appreciative of my career and everything, but it doesn't mean that necessarily I have the life that I wanted on my personal life, right? And I am normally a person that I'm super goal oriented, and I know exactly what I want. I'm so laser focused when it comes to my career. But when it comes to my personal life, I'm normally more like, it'll come, things happen when they happen. And, but what do I want from that? And how does that look like? I think that's an area where I struggle, and it is a great exercise. But I am trying to balance both, because I don't want to be, I think the key to also the success that we've had is that I've always known what I wanted. It's like, my mom has this example. It's like the eagle, right? It knows where its prey is, and it goes and gets it, but it never goes against the wind. And if it needs to sit on a branch, and wait for the wind to turn or go the other way and then come back, it will. And I think that capacity of flowing has been part of the success that we've had, and also making it joyful, right? Because that's the thing. Like, there needs to be a balance between this Excel spreadsheet and now that people are like, you need to have a 6-month program, as a year, 18 months, 24 months. How's your life? Next 5 years look like? Like, I hear my friends with these conversations on first dates. I'm like, oh my God, I would like jump out the window. Like, I would
run.
what? Like, that's a lot. Like, can I get to know you? Who are you? Am I even interested in knowing what your 5-year plan is? Like, I don't know. So I'm not, I am not I just know that there needs to be a balance between goals, knowing how to flow, because that is the thing. I think the thing also about the massive frustration that we're facing, right? Because we set ourselves up for failure, right? Like, if we don't accomplish this by this, then we feel like we're nothing. If we don't accomplish this by that, then guess what? I mean, I'm accomplishing goals that I thought I was going to accomplish 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's now my time. So, so it's like, if I would have been so fixated that I needed to be 10 years ago, and now, if not, I'm a failure, then you're not experiencing magic. I'm not enjoying, my life as it is. And if I would go back to that Excel sheet and look at myself, and I don't have a family, I don't have kids. I thought my life was going to be very different at this day in my life. I could be very, very frustrated, but I feel like the universe gave me for a beautiful relationship, and has given me very beautiful relationships. And I need to look at that. And yes, I am trying to do this exercise, which is excruciating for me, just so I can have more clarity of what is it that I want. But that is the thing. The overachiever in me doesn't want to actually put it on paper. Then I'm gonna be like fixated, right?
I must.
If it doesn't happen, then
I know.
So it's like it is kind of, and it's funny, and I'm sharing this because it's a very vulnerable thing that I'm sharing, because I think this happens to all of us. I don't want to
for sure
that I have it all figured out. I don't. I'm just trying to like do the best I can with what I have in this moment. Right. I also know life is very fragile, and it can end in a minute, and it sounds cliche, but my best friend died exactly a year ago in a tragic car crash. And I have a life where I've had a lot of losses, death's constantly reminding me of how fragile life is. So that's why I'm also trying to always be like, look, I'm doing the best I can with what I have, and I'm taking full responsibility and accountability of what I'm doing. But hey, this is what we have to work with right this second.
Right. Yeah. I know. And I think, for me as a woman too, it's hard. It's much easier for me to get into the work state of what I want in work. And it's not as easy personally, like, it's just more challenging. And so I think having women that we can talk to about it, like, if you want anyone to be I'm happy to be like non-judgmental, like, because when we write our goals down, and we want to check in with someone regularly, how's it going? What's happening? Easier to do in work, I think. So
that's like boom, boom, boom. I can do it in 3 seconds.
I know. Yeah.
I spent a Saturday afternoon just trying to go do this exercise, and I was a hot mess. Like, I cried, I ripped it off, I threw it out, didn't throw it out the window, but it felt like I threw it out the window, and I was like, I can't do this, and what have I done? And
where's my life?
It's actually really interesting to see how different it feels when it's work and when it feels.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And one of the things too that I've come to terms with, I mean, I thought I would be married, have a family. I was married with divorced and I don't have kids. And I was like, for sure, I'm going to be a mom. And people say this to me, and I believe this, and I believe the same to be true, that, you're a mom to all our children in the world. And, kids need love and caring and nurturing. And, what a gift that you're giving the kids that you're interacting with on a regular basis, these
Yeah.
skills and talents and abilities and the path forward. So,
Yeah, it is a a bless, and it is something that I I need to have that connection with kids, because they make, I mean, kids on their four, so they're so hopeful and they have so much
I,
joy, and I've seen them in the most horrific circumstances, and they're still like playing with whatever they have, and you see them in that innocence of like, I've been in the border with, they've been like with nothing and they are exhausted and they still just want to play with whatever, a rock, or let's just throw this rock. And I've seen them in shelters in Tijuana, and whatever little thing you can do in there, and just that time with them, it's everything, right? And they're so happy that you're just taking the time to play. And I think that is very important to me, because it does, we need to be a lot more connected to that energy, that child inside us, that
yeah,
that is joyful and
yeah.
hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I learned most about hope traveling all over the world and going into the back. I spent a lot of time in Brazil traveling, and seeing people with nothing that were just as happy as can be, or in Africa, and me equating happiness always with things and, specific, and understanding that that's actually not where it comes from. And so really learning about where does it come from. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. And I can imagine you're like this angel coming in for these kids, seeing you have such love, like you have such joy coming out of you and love. And for some kids, you were that symbol of hope for them. We know that kids receiving that love, it's just so powerful from adults. And so you could be, all over the world, that kind of icon of hope for them. So it's really amazing the work that you're doing. I'm so grateful that we met and,
Thank
yeah, got
you.
connected, yeah, with you. Is there anything else you want to share before
I think
we?
I do want to finish off on talking about La Latina Cocina, because Latina Cocina is basically my cookbook. La Latina came to life, and talk about like when you're not fixated in how something looks like, right? I thought that I was going to have this restaurant, and but I always thought about scale and impact, right? Because it, that's part of like the way my brain works. And another part was like, okay, how can I make Latinas feel represented, and that they can dream, that they can do it. And out of the work that I did with World Central Kitchen in the pandemic, which we were feeding at the height of it 100,000 people a day, not only the community in need, but frontline workers, and working with 250 restaurants, most of them minority-owned restaurants that were staples to the community, and they were feeding its own community. And that's one of the work, that's a scope of work that I've done that I'm so proud of, and so thankful to Jose Andres for giving me the opportunity in World Central Kitchen, for giving me the opportunity to be part of it. And then out of that, after that, Aramark, which is a large operating partner, reached out and said, we want to develop a Latin concept. And I said, I have a Latin concept. I've always dreamt about this concept. And then we developed La Latina Cuisine, which is about bringing healthier and more culturally appropriate foods into the higher education programs. And it has my name on it. And the reason why I had to push them to have my name and my photo, is because I wanted young Latinas to dream, and to dream big, and that know that they could do it too. Because I am the perfect example that, yes, my family had everything in Venezuela. We lost everything. And then I arrived back into this country when I was at 18 years old with nothing. Just, sleeping on my uncle's couch for a long time and working in a retail store and then working at MTV. So I've really, really done all this, by myself, surrounded with a lot of amazing people and great mentors along the way and little angels that have helped me along the way. But I think that is what I want to leave this with. Like, now we started in 2 universities. Now we're in 85 universities across the country. I'm the first Latina to have that level of representation in higher educational space with the Latina Cuisine with Chef Grace Ramirez. So that is something that, I did not get fixated on an idea of having a restaurant. I kind of let a goal and a dream and a mission lead the way.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's become bigger than I would have ever dreamt of. But it was only because I trusted. I knew what I wanted. I trusted, but I also let the universe do its magic. But I never stopped working, and I never stopped. I always like to say, like, you have to be your most enthusiastic cheerleader, and you cannot expect for people to just give you that seat at the table. So sometimes you have to make that seat at the table, or really make that space for that other girl to sit at the table. So that is something that I'm very proud of, and that has been a great example of how life took its course, and now it's even bigger and better than I would have ever dreamt of. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Yeah, and that's such a good example of how you get to what you hope for. And maybe what you hope for isn't exactly what the universe has in store for you. And maybe if you can let go and surrender and keep following and trusting, yeah, it's even bigger and better than you ever could have imagined or dreamed up. And it's that kind of dance, and it's not giving up. And you thought it would happen 10 years, or you think things happen 10 years, and who knows when they happen if you just keep following the kind of, I call it that divine inspiration,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
is so amazing. So how can people get involved in your work and
So I
learn
think
about you?
yeah. So the website is Chef Grace Ramirez. My Instagram is at Chef Grace Ramirez. And I think that there, we have all kinds of information of not only like all the stuff that I'm doing, but all the organizations that I'm involved with. And I am that crazy person that tries to answer all my DMs. Um, so yeah, we need a hopeful tab on my website to just say, this is what you can do. But yeah, I'm that person that answers almost anything, and if not, then I'm sure we will get to you.
Oh my gosh.
Barbara, my right hand person, will make sure I get back to you.
Nice. That's amazing. Oh my
Thank
gosh.
you for
Thank
this
you.
platform and opportunity, and I so appreciate the work that you do, and I'm very grateful also that we met and that we are now connected.
Yes, me too, Grace. Thank you so much.
My
And
pleasure.
yeah, you're such a beacon of hope, and you're just like full of love. You just exude, yeah, really incredible and beauty and just, yeah. So thank you so much. And thank you all you listeners for listening in today to learn more about hope and activating hope in your life and how others are doing it, and how, the ideas we learn from people that have paved the way before us, so that our journey maybe isn't quite as challenging, we're equipped with skills. So especially if young Latina women, please share this, and let's get the message out that, no matter what we're going through, there are skills to activate hope in our lives and create a better future for ourselves. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Have a great day, and remember to keep shining hope. Take care.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
dear.
So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out the shinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Heroes, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course, so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Catherine Getsky, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.